All right, this will be the last thing I want to talk to you about. I want to talk about the Miami Heat and Pat Riley. You got to start having this stuff like on demand, where people have to pay a subscription service to it. Where it's the end of the season uh, end of the season press conference. Pat Riley comes out and then he basically just talks for like 45 straight minutes. And he had some very interesting things to say about Jimmy Butler, just kind of talking about how he isn't always out there and isn't always available, and that kind of like set off a lot of warning signals of like, wait a second, what is the direction of this Miami Heat team? Because Jimmy's, in his like mid 30s now. He still has a lot of good basketball in front of him, probably, but there's probably no more heights that he can reach that he hasn't already reached. You have Bam, who's being a star for the Team USA right now in the Olympics, and has just always been like a very versatile player. He's one of those players that's like, if he's out there, you don't have to worry that much about like the center position. You can have another big against him. I think he's showing a lot of his versatility. What is the future for this Miami Heat team right now? Because right now it kind of seems like you guys are kind of like stuck in, and I'm not necessarily sure what direction you guys are going to be headed in the next like, year or two.
Yeah, the Miami Heat are very much in a transitional phase. I think part of that transition needs to be really making it Bam Adebayo's team. I mean, he is the captain of the team now, but obviously, it still feels like it's Jimmy's team, or at least it has been Jimmy Butler's team. Maybe even Jimmy's still going to be in Miami at least for another year, or at least until the next trade deadline, because I guarantee nothing beyond the trade deadline. But it really still is Jimmy Butler's team, but I think that the transition needs to be made to make it Bam's team. The Heat have put themselves in a really tough position, and some of the deals that they've made in recent years, like acquiring Kyle Lowry, that didn't work out. They made a deal for Terry Rozier before the deadline last year. He wasn't healthy after arriving in Miami, so if he can stay healthy, maybe he can give you something. But so far,
Mhm.
that's been a bust. Maybe he can turn that around. But based on some of these deals that they've made, they put themselves in this purgatory where they haven't had enough chips to go out and make like a blockbuster deal, when making a blockbuster deal is kind of what they need to do. They also had some bad luck about a year ago, because Damian Lillard, he desperately wanted to be in Miami, but the GM at Portland just for some reason just did not want to do business with Miami. So he was like, I'll send this guy to Milwaukee. I'll send this guy overseas if I have to. So they unfortunately weren't able to get that deal done, which could have been potentially a team-friendly deal in terms of the trade. So yeah, the Heat are kind of stuck in this position where I think for them to be better than what they were last year. Now, 2 years ago, they made it to the NBA Finals, probable fashion, because they were a play-in team that went all the way to the finals, which hadn't really happened, and it's not going to happen very often. But last year they were bounced in dominant fashion by Boston in the first round. And it's like you don't have a lot of reason to believe that they're going to be much better than like a play-in type of team this year. But they do have a couple of young players that I'm really bullish on. Jaime Jaquez Jr., who had a really good rookie season last year, and Nikola Jovic, who shows a lot of promise that can, end up maybe being, one of those next really good European big men. And obviously Bam, but Bam is not really a secret. Everybody knows how good Bam Adebayo can be now. And then in terms of the Jimmy Butler thing, like you referenced Pat Riley, rightfully so, being critical of Jimmy because he just doesn't take the regular season seriously. And it's like, okay, like we've seen evidence of he can just turn it on in the playoffs, which is great, except last year he was injured in the playoffs, so he couldn't turn it on. And then maybe if he took the regular season a little bit more seriously, the Heat wouldn't be an 8 or a 9 seed and a playoff team, right? That if he didn't take so many games off. And yeah, listen, he's, like you said, mid-30s, and he used to play for Tom Thibodeau, which puts extra mileage on the body. So I get it. Like there's going to be some games where Jimmy's going to be nursing injuries, but then there are other games where Jimmy just doesn't feel like playing, and he wants to be to do a maintenance day, and it ends up hurting the team. I mean, he played 60 games last year, which I actually think was a little bit more than he played in the regular season the year prior. But you got to get that up towards 70 plus, I think. Like for the Heat to be a team that actually locks up one of those coveted top 6 seeds where you avoid the play-in, I think he's got to play in 70 plus games. So that's why he doesn't have a new contract extension yet, why he's going to be playing out the final year of his deal in Miami, because I think Pat Riley wants to see, and maybe Jimmy just decides, I don't want to re-sign here, which is fine. Like, he may be turned off by not having the extension. We'll see how that plays out. But Pat Riley wasn't going to give him that extension until he sees this guy's going to really show us that the regular season matters to him, because it has not mattered to him over the past few years.
With that contract situation, I feel like Miami is in one of those situations where like they actually like the team has the leverage over that, because it's like where would Jimmy go? Like a lot of teams don't have cap space, and then it would have to be some
Right.
sort of sign and trade, and then what kind of like quote unquote destination could he go to where like he would want to acquiesce that. So I do think that is kind of like what you're talking about, where it's if you're Miami and you're building, you kind of have to do the superstar chase, whether that it's like, waiting for Donovan. Everyone, Cleveland, the Cleveland fans had a little bit of a victory lap earlier this year when Donovan Mitchell re-signed, when no one thought he was going to re-sign. I'm like, okay, well, then he could still ask for a trade in like January. Like that's something that very much could happen. And then I think Miami could be a team that could very much line up and be suitors for somebody like a Donovan Mitchell or whoever is the next unhappy star, because it's kind of weird, like Oklahoma City, I think is an interesting comparison where it's another well-run franchise, but Oklahoma City has bottomed out or had opportunities to get like higher end lottery picks and make those swings in the draft because they had like a few bad years, and then they had like the picks from like Houston or wherever, and or I guess like J-Dub was from the Clippers actually, and
Yeah.
Miami hasn't necessarily had any of those type of things. Even the years where they were transitioning, like post LeBron and kind of like the later stages of Dwayne Wade, you're still like kind of like the middle of the road, like either like late lottery team or you're like sneaking into the playoffs, so you're having to like take your swings at like 14 for Tyler Hero. Bam, I think was a late lottery guy, Jaime Jaquez, and I really like the guy that you guys drafted, Khalil Ware out of Indiana. I
Oh,
think that'll be
yes.
like an
I like
yeah,
him as
he'll
well.
he'll
He
be
had
an
a really
excellent
good
piece.
summer league. Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be an excellent because he can play next to Bam, which again, we were talking about the versatility of Bam is that guy can play next to him. That just adds a whole other, extra wrinkle for you guys defensively or even offensively to a degree there too. So it is kind of like a weird phase that you guys are in where you are transitioning, but you're too good to tank. Even if like you had like Spoelstra with a kind of like a bunch of like cast offs and misfits, you feel like he's gonna like Will Hardy's kind of the same way in Utah where it's like they're trying to tank but like their coach is too good where he's like winning like 33 games a year when you're trying to tank and like bench players and trade away guys. So I don't know. It's like you're optimistic, but you're kind of like, where are we going?
You're so right about Spoelstra, by the way, because I feel like Spoelstra has more fun coaching teams that shouldn't be good. Like, he's like he could turn any collection of talent into an 8 or 9 seed. Like, it doesn't even. And obviously, he's coached some of the most talented teams when Miami had the big three, but he's also coached a lot of teams that just punched above their weight. And I feel like those are Spo's favorite coaching jobs, because he loves tinkering with lineups. He loves experimenting. He loves, he and his staff love, developing undrafted players and guys who go out and get, big deals elsewhere. So I honestly feel like Spo, he prefers situations where he's not supposed to win. Those are the situations where, relatively speaking, he thrives.
With Spolstra too, I was doing like some research on him, like maybe like a few months ago when everyone was talking about him being like it's crazy he's never won a coach of the year, which sometimes when you go through it, you're like, okay, it makes sense why he hasn't, because really like the best high win total years were with like the LeBron, D Wade, Bosh, big three, the Heatles. And then the other years were kind of like he's punching above his weight with like lesser talent. So he hasn't necessarily had that like kind of like sweet spot year where he can win that award. But I don't know how much that award necessarily means to how good of a coach you are. We've seen coach of the years get fired with like 2 weeks
Yeah.
after like receiving the award. So it is, and also too, just looking back at those Heat teams, like, the LeBron, D Wade, Bosh teams, he's such a better coach now than he was then. Like he was a good coach back then, but now he's like 2 or 3 levels above. So if you're looking just anything optimistically about the future, Spolstra's Bam got to be it. So Alex, thank you very much for spending time here with me today, about 30 minutes. So can you go ahead and tell everyone where we can find all of your content and see all of your work, and then we'll get out of here.
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, James, it's always a pleasure. Yeah, you guys can check out my shows, Locked On Canes, where I talk everything Miami Hurricanes athletics. You can find it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I also, like James mentioned, I host Locked On ACC, as well, where we talk about the entire conference, which not only means like football and basketball stuff, but lawsuits and conference realignment rumors. It's the ACC is a gift that never stops giving. So you can find me there and find me on X. I do most of my tweeting or whatever we call it now from the at Locked On Canes account is your best bet for finding me. So yeah, I appreciate your audience and I appreciate the opportunity, James. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching this clip from the Sports Detective Podcast Show. If you like what you saw here today, please hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. That is the best thing that you can do to support this show, and it costs you absolutely $0, and it is the best thing that you can do to help this show grow. And feel free to check out the rest of the Sports Detective Podcast channel page, because you might find some other videos that you like, including that video right there on your screen right now. Thank you for watching. Talk to you next time.